It's a minute past, so we'll get started again. Thanks for joining. Appreciate it. This is giving some insights into how different organizations are managing Microsoft 365 change. I've got myself. I'm co-founder of Empowering Cloud. We're community-based and research-based around Microsoft 365. We've got Arin, who's going to be the bulk of the insights from this webinar. Really excited to hear from her and how her and her team manage 365 change at a large healthcare provider. And Michael is a familiar face in the community, both a M365 product manager at North, but also very engaged in the Microsoft 365 and change community as an MVP. So we're going to go through Arin kind of giving us insight into how her and her team run change, what the team looks like, what's working, what's not working, what's challenging, and feel free to fire into the chat thoughts and questions throughout. Just a quick look at some numbers in terms of the message center. Don't have a slide for that. Like we know now that a typical tenant has, trending for over 2,000 changes a year, as in unique messages, but also those messages from Microsoft are frequently getting updated and changing, even more so now with the Copilot era and the AI era. Lots of things are pushed out and then the date slips, or additional information is added, or screenshots are added. So there's a lot that changes with the changes, not just the changes themselves, and that's part of the challenge of keeping up. But you kind of all know, I assume from people on this webinar, you'll know the basics of change. So Arin, maybe I could hand over to you to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about how you and your team approach it.
Well, Tom, before we do that, let me take a few of the slides here and talk about the volume of change that people are facing.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, sorry, Michael, you've got a couple of slides, haven't you? Yeah, please take over.
Yep. Okay, so as I'm sure everyone here knows, there's a lot of change in M365. It's changing constantly. Message Center is the place where all change communications happen, and there are literally hundreds of Microsoft product teams making products, building web capabilities, building M365 across 71 unique products or applications, and that means there's literally thousands of messages that come into Message Center every year. Let me take control here, and so I manage an M365 tenant for a nonprofit research institute, and over the last 3 years, we've seen the number of messages that we triage, that we look at, increase dramatically. In 2023, we saw 1,433 changes. In 2024, that number rose to 1,573, and this year we're on track to see at least 2,000 changes announced in our tenant. The experience that I've had with the volume of Message Center is pretty typical, because 80% of all messages get sent to all tenants. About 20% of those messages, actually 19%, get sent to some subset targeted based on some criteria, and 1% of the messages are sent to one specific tenant, which of course varies by message. As Tom mentioned, we see these things update. So not only do we get, in this case, looking at the time period June through September, we saw about 593 new messages. We also saw existing messages, pretty much twice as many existing messages get updated as well. Sometimes that's obvious from Message Center, where a new message comes along that says this is an update to a previous message, or the previous message, the existing message gets updated. Other times it's not as obvious, and that's why third-party products can really help you see and compare current version to previous version. But again, there's twice as many updates as there are new messages, so the volume of change is extremely high. Leading that change is Copilot. Copilot is the most changed application this year. It's got the most number of change announcements, followed by Teams, followed by Microsoft Purview, on down the line. So the volume of change is extremely high here, with Copilot leading the way. this is something that every tenant and every tenant administrator or change manager for a tenant needs to manage. So I thought it'd be really interesting to hear from some of my peers about how they're doing it. And so that's why I'm so super excited to welcome Arin to join us today to talk about how she manages change in her tenant. Go ahead and take it away.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Michael. So hello, everyone. My name's Arin Komins. I currently work for Blue Cross Blue Shield Association, although I've been managing Microsoft 365 through a couple of different organizations here in the past. So let me tell you a little bit about the things that I do here at my organization. And so I think Michael's, and I don't need to go into this agenda because we're going to be talking about all of this already. But let me, just reiterate some of those things that Michael has been saying and Tom has been saying. Microsoft 365 is evergreen. And unlike your traditional application where you may get a new release every 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, you're getting changes daily as they come in. And so it's our job to figure out what are the things that matter. Of course, this isn't the only way we get word, right? Because sometimes what ends up happening is that you may get the word via social channels before it ever hits your message center. You may be getting things coming in from LinkedIn, from the tech community, from different people's blogs. When the message center post does eventually hit, it may bear little to no resemblance about what has been actually communicated in those social channels. It makes our lives a little bit extra complicated when we're trying to figure out what we need to do. So let me talk a little bit about my methodology for really trying to figure out the things that matter. So first off, do you know who all of your players are? So in my world, right, I have always had matrix teams. So we have different workload owners for all of the different things in Microsoft 365. As Michael was saying, right, Microsoft 365 is not actually one product. We have over 71 product workloads sitting within Microsoft 365. And we have different groups of people who are responsible for different parts of that. And so what we have done is we have kind of a living PowerPoint deck to kind of marry up who's got responsibility for what, right? And then we define a committee. And that committee needs to have workload owners, and it needs to be a representative person who is responsible for taking action for that particular workload, who needs to attend that committee, because we use that committee as the core of our triaging process. And so we hold our triage meeting, because we do one every Monday. We figure let's get the week started off right. And we do it as part of a shared team, and we do it as a channel meeting so that anybody who belongs to the team is more than welcome to jump in, listen in, right? They may have contributions to make, right? They may have something that they want to say, or they might just want to stay informed. And I happen to chair that particular meeting, but I do that with backup from some of the other managers, right, from those various workload owner groups.
Arin,
So
how do you find the engagement with that is? Because I found in different organizations, like different teams are more excited about change or less excited about
nobody's
change.
excited about change. Let's be honest. Nobody's excited about change because everyone runs thin for staffing now. And all change tends to be is, oh my God, there's another thing I have to think about. So from like back-end workload owners tend to be more like, okay, we need to be here, to understand what we need to do, right? What's going on in our world, and how is it going to affect my day-to-day? But that said, it's a good place where we all get together to talk about current issues as well, because we have a standing agenda for every service management meeting, because we talk about what's hot for the week, because there are all sorts of wonderful, chaotic things going on in the world, right, that we all need to be adapting to, whether those are from incoming changes, those are leadership related things, those are kind of what's going on in people's individual groups. And we also need to talk about some standard stuff, right? Because we have a change advisory board here at the association. We need to make sure we're all staying in coordinated lockstep because we are a matrixed organization. We also want to let everyone know about any upcoming communications, whether those are things that I am communicating out, things that internal communications is pushing out, things that external communications is pushing out, things that are coming from leadership. We want to make sure that everyone is staying on the same page. And then we tackle all of the wonderful new and fabulous changes, and I say that with a wonderful grain of salt, that are coming from Microsoft. We also happen to talk about our UAT because we do have a user acceptance testing tenant, right, that we use in order to try things out, but we have a very limited number of licenses there. So we all talk about who's doing what so that we're not stepping on each other's toes. And we do issue review, right?
So, Arin, did you have
Standard stuff.
the UAT tenant? Do you have
Yes.
that, I guess, enrolled in the preview tracks where you can?
Nope,
Oh, so
we do not.
That's a GA tenant. So that's interesting because one of the challenges I hear a lot of is how do you test things when they're coming just as quick into live as they are into
yeah,
the
so
UAT tenant.
we do our testing into our UAT tenant because we keep our live tenant fairly locked down. So
okay, so the benefit of UAT is it defaults on so you can test things, whereas your compliance team on the prod tenant would have locked it down. Okay, that's really interesting. So the benefit to you is not that tenant gets things early, it's that just it's a playground that has no corporate data on, so you can test how Copilot works without having to go through the compliance team to turn it on, for example, because they're not sure if they want it on or not.
We primarily do it so that we can test tenant-wide changes. Like when we need to make, compliance-related changes, I don't want to break anything in my production environment without having to try it first. Right? We need to have some reasonable level of understanding that I'm not going to wake up tomorrow and my email will be broken, right? That's always a bad idea. People tend to frown on that.
Yeah, not a good idea to break people's email.
Yeah. All right, let me move on a little. So let me talk to you a little bit about the timeline, the magical, wonderful timeline that we have. So we happen to be using the Planner Sync for the Message Center in order to manage all of the incoming changes that are coming from Microsoft, which, as you know, come from a fire hose. So, and they change constantly. One of the true advantages that I tend to find is that when I hit the button to sync everything over to Planner, it doesn't give me only the newly updated. It doesn't give me only the new items. It gives me also anything that's been newly changed, right? And that means even the things that I have once closed in my planner may come back to life because there are new changes that need to be adopted. Or there are new changes Microsoft thinks I want to see, even if I really don't care. So for instance, one of the common changes I tend to see are things like, hey, and now we've updated the timeline because this change is now going to be available in a GCC tenant. And I always say, thank you so much, Microsoft. I am not a GCC tenant. I really don't care, but I don't have a way of saying, don't give me those updates. We still need to react to those. And so after I've done the push on Monday morning, the next thing I tend to do to make my service management team meeting go a little bit more smoothly is I go ahead and I put in any related date that Microsoft has indicated in the Message Center post, which is, as you all know, if you've been managing M365 change for a while, those dates are wonderfully vague, right? You will get things in the resemblance of beginning of November, sometime by end of Q2. It's kind of variable and all over the map, but I have to take a stab at saying it's going to be this day, right? And what we do is, all of my workload owners know that if a date has changed, because Microsoft's let us know that we can update that planner date, right? Just to constantly reflect that. Because now it's rolling to Monday afternoon, it's time to do that triage meeting right? And I throw all of my particular unreviewed items into an unreviewed bucket in Planner. And then I take no action on any of those other than to assign dates until I'm in a meeting with my workload owners, because I want
How
to
long is
make.
that taking you, Arin, to get through all the items, go through the copy, pick out the dates like that? So that's a decent amount of lift, is it?
Well, the copy is all Power Automate, so that, I mean, the push to Planner is not hard. Running through and grabbing all of the dates takes me about an hour, right? Depending on the number of changes that are happening.
Yeah, because that's one of the challenges, is the dates are sometimes a bit better, like it's not uniform, as in like the dates are at the top of the copy, they can be all over the place.
Yeah, they're usually beginning, middle, or end of one month to beginning, middle, or end of another. And so I tend to do to either do the 1st, the 15th, or the 30th of the month, or looking at the calendar, depending on like if it's going to when the beginning of the month falls, and when like, do we need to look at this before it lands, or can we only look at it after it lands?
And there's
adjusting appropriately.
And there's one additional complication you need to consider about dates, which is Microsoft gives you ranges. It does not give you fixed. And you have to make a judgment call. Do you want to put a date which is the start of the change, or do you want to put a date that is the end of the change? And I tend to, as I'm running through all of these, for technical related items, I almost always will use the beginning date of the implementation. For user-focused changes, and I'll be talking a little bit about that in a minute, user-focused changes I tend to put at the end of the range, because depending on the nature of the change, I don't frequently announce things to my user base until the change is live. Simply because it's people's attention span is not that long. So if it's a quick change, I want to make sure that people can actually use the thing I'm telling them about, rather than waiting in advance. But there's some complications to that, and I'll talk about those in just a minute. After we're in our service management meeting, I will run through every item that is sitting in that unreviewed bucket in Planner. And then I will let the workload owner tell me, what do I need to do with it? Do they want to see it? Or they're like, it's not relevant to me, you can go ahead and close that. And if I get a verbal, you can close that, I will close down those items so that we don't have to be looking at them again, until, of course, Microsoft chooses to bring them back to life. But that's a different story. All right.
Zombie message center posts. You think they're dead, and then they come back to life.
You think they're dead, and they're never truly, truly dead. And there's, as I think everyone knows, there's some real interesting challenges with message center posts, because, of course, they're not written by one product team. They're written by many, many, many different product teams, and they all have slightly different approaches on how they do it. But that said, now it's time to tackle what type of changes we're looking at, right? And so when we're triaging it down, I tend to kind of think of, these are admin level technical changes, and then I've got user focused changes. And for user focused changes, I tend to kind of put them into buckets, right? I've got a small, a medium, and a large type of affair. And, admin stuff relevant for the workload owners, I don't need to tell anybody else about any of those. What I class as small, things that take one screenshot and maybe like 2 lines, right, to talk to people about. And maybe I don't have to talk to everybody about them. Maybe it's only a small user group that's using it. A medium level change is something that takes multiple screenshots and a lot more text in order to best form that cohesive story about what is going on. And it may not be that I have to inform everybody about that, but I really need to kind of put that together in a package for some reason. And really large changes, right, are ones that require communication plans. These are the things that cause concern, that will cause mass chaos, right, if they go, right, and you haven't informed. So for instance, one of the recent larger changes that I did lots of pre-planning on was the Teams UI changeover. right? When they got rid of the Teams app and everything turned into chat, because I knew that that was going to cause chaos, right? As people logged in and said, I can't find anything. What is going on? I wanted to be ahead of that rather than behind that. And so this is important because it's all about notification mechanisms in my world. And so if it's admin level, I really mostly only need to inform, right, the people who are in the service management team, with a couple of exceptions, because I do have business owners who do need to be informed when I'm tackling certain workloads. So for instance, when I'm tackling on the Viva communications and community side, which is something that we do license, which is Viva Engage, Amplify, and Connections, I need to let our internal communications team know because they're my primary owners on that. And if I'm looking at Viva Glint or Viva Goals, I need to make sure that I'm talking to my HR department. And then when for all of my other user focused changes, right? If it is a small related change, right? I post it to a org-wide team that I happen to have, or I post it into a Viva Engage group, which I have recently transitioned to. So I have a brand new in Microsoft 365, right? So that everyone knows this is the place you go in order to see these like small changes as they're coming. If it is a medium related change, I post it into my intranet. I have a page for my what's new in Microsoft 365. I link everything there because what I'm probably doing is creating new SharePoint pages to explain those changes. And so they all get linked in. And if I'm looking at a large focus change, then depending on its nature, right, this is where I need my communications plan. I may need cab tickets. I might need C-suite communications, right? I need support group communications. I may need to get something out in my intranet digests, and I may need champion boosting.
Can you talk us through how it works, Aaron? Because that's really, you've just gone through a lot there for a large change. Like, is that you communicating all of those components? Have you got a separate, like, is it going into a service now or some other system? Because that feels like beyond Planner for the capability of managing.
It is totally beyond Planner. We normally, at that point in time, we are tracking the high level item in Planner, but then we take it out into a change communications process. We follow an ADCAR model, you know, and then we have organization specific comms plan paths and templates that we tend to use when we are communicating out.
I mean, how do you, like, one of the kind of pressure points is there are particularly a lot of large changes. You don't want to overwhelm the organization with lots of comms to the business users being like, this has changed and this has changed and that changed. Is that communications team coordinating those comms, prioritizing those comms? Do they have the ultimate say on how those comms go out and when they go out?
Well, that depends on the nature of the change. The little and the medium ones, I don't run through coordinating groups. The best I do is try and bring together coordinating changes. As Michael's been saying, right, Copilot has been changing a lot recently. And so sometimes they're changing faster than I have the opportunity to actually announce them. So if I'm trying to play catch-ups, right, and catching a number of changes in arrears, I will try bundling things together. So, hey, we've had 12 different changes coming for Copilot. Let me bundle all of those together and talk to you about the wonderful new things that are happening. So for instance, like when we did the announcements wrapped around the new Copilot Create, Copilot Notebooks, and some of the new features in the new UI for Copilot on the web, I did those alongside of training classes. And so I did a whole coordinated approach and to talk about, hey, we're going to have a summer of learning about Copilot and we're going to do individualized classes, right, based around these brand new features for you, you know, please come and join. And, you know, then I had reinforcement work that was going to try and bring people into those classes. You know, again, it depends on the nature of the change. You know, when we were doing the new Teams UI changes, you know, we ended up all the way up through our C-suite because everyone was like, oh my God, why do I need to care? You know, and it can be fun. There's not really a one true way of doing this. A lot of this depends on the appetite for change in your organization. But my little changes, I've been training all of my business staff whenever I talk to them that M365 changes all the time, that you should never be surprised when something looks a little bit different. You should never be panicking, right? If you want to see something that's going on, people can always, search in one of the communities that I already have, or they can always reach out and chat.
And how does this mix in with, like, there'll be changes to other parts of IT, your line of business apps, your ServiceNow, like are that team also managing? Well, there's a lot going on in Copilot, but there's also a lot going in on Salesforce right now, or ServiceNow, or are they different teams all trying to get?
They're all different teams. They're all different teams, and they all have different notification mechanisms. I tend to be the one who is out there talking to the most amount of people because my M365 related items are company-wide, primarily.
Yeah.
Where most of the line of business apps are not. They tend to do direct communication to their user communities. For big related changes, I coordinate those through my internal communications team. So because they're aware of all of the other comms that are going out to the organization. So, I'm not overriding really important messages that are coming from leadership in a given week, for instance.
Yeah. And do you do any like asynchronous stuff, like using Viva Engage to kind of talk about updates or post about updates that people can get to on their own time?
Yeah, that's my small and my mediums. They're all going out via asynchronous means.
They just go to that.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Mm-hmm. This is super interesting. Thank you.
Yes, of course. All right. And I think that's the last of my formal slides. And I thought we had some questions coming up in the chat.
Yeah, let me skim through.
There's some good ones in here. I'll start from the bottom. The last three comments were from Carol. When you post to your team, do you just post the message as it is, or do you rewrite it in more user-friendly?
Never, ever, ever do I just post it as is. They are not written in business user-focused language. Yeah, they don't mean anything to my community. I always prefer to rewrite and to provide examples of things that actually make sense in our world. And I like to tie them to, kind of exciting language. Like, hey, have you been trying to do this thing and you haven't been able to do it? And you've wished to yourself that there was a way? There's now a way. Let me tell you how. Because I like to build that excitement layer if I can.
I'll just emphasize that the messaging we see in Message Center is really intended for tenant admins and change managers. It's not intended for end users. Sometimes it's not even really intended. I mean, it's written in what I'll call Microsoft speak, and sometimes it's clear that the people writing the message don't really understand how the tenant admins and change managers are going to consume the message. And so yes, there's never a situation where you would want to give that directly to an end user.
Yeah, it's way too scary. The best I have done with some of the ones that I get, because my HR team and my internal communications team don't tend to come to my service management meetings. They've got a lot of things calling on their time. So what I will frequently do is I will assign them planner items directly, and then I will send them a Teams chat to let them know what it actually means, so that they're not completely confused, right? Because they don't speak Microsoft's language, right? I have to translate for them, right? To let them know things like, hey, organizational data is changing. We're going to finally get the ability to do, historical updates. So when the next time we have the next iteration of our job architecture changes, we'll be able to go back in and better update, the organizational alignment, so that we will be able to, better see how that's mapping out. You have to marry it up to, their world, not our world.
switch the sharing there briefly. I want to make sure we get everybody's questions.
Yeah, there was a question about managing people in different update channels. So if you've got people on deferred versus current or in preview, do you have that scenario where you've got people?
I
in
do
different...
not. We keep everybody on the same update channel. I'm sitting in current, but everyone else is sitting in semi-annual, so that I tend to see things a little bit earlier than everybody else. But as I say, one of the things that we do before I announce anything is I verify it's actually hit the environment. Because as you know, right, just because they say it's hitting does not actually mean that it's hit. Because sometimes, it takes them a few weeks after a date's gone by before they realized, oh yeah, it didn't really hit, did it? And I end up putting in Microsoft tickets and saying, you told me that Copilot was now supposed to be able to pull from 5 different files in order to put a presentation together. And that date has been and gone, and it's not in my tenant. What's going on, oh Microsoft? And then you have to, fight that out a little. And then they're like, oh, well, it says it's launched. The roadmap says it's launched. Everyone should learn and love their M365 roadmap, because you're playing that game of, well, the message center post says this, but the roadmap still says it's in development.
Yeah.
So, you're always in a case of always verify, always verify that it's actually hit you, because otherwise you run the risk of announcing something that people may not see for months. And that's not really the user experience you really want to drive.
Yeah, no, your comms are gonna get ignored because you keep telling me I
Yes.
can do this thing and I can't do this thing.
And I can't do this
Right.
thing. Right. And I'm
Yeah.
losing credibility by doing that. And
Yeah. I think that goes to what point you said earlier about delivering your comms after the change has landed, because in many, and this can vary change by change, but I think it's important to, you've got to land your message around the time the user sees the change. Otherwise, if it's too far before, they'll forget about the message by the time they see the change. If it's too far after, it won't be relevant anymore, or again, or you'll already have gotten the help desk tickets or what have you.
Mhm.
Okay, so are there other questions we should take?
Let's just run through
There's a comment there about deploying to education tenants. Yeah, I mean, like you've got your if you look at the roadmap, you can see the different environments. There's the commercial environment. There's the GovCloud, GovCloud High, DoD, and these different environments get deployed to at different times. But then even within an environment, like certain features only come to edu, others don't come to edu tenants. So edu tenants are a little bit different than commercial tenants. And yeah, the like when a feature doesn't land, often you can go back to the message center post and say, oh yeah, look, it's now I see that this post has been updated and says, oh yeah, we delayed the rollout so many months.
Oops, we lied. Oops,
Yeah.
we've decided not to move that change forward, because there's been several recently where they've like, okay, we tried it and it was a miserable failure, and therefore we're not going to launch it any further. And so they're like, okay, we'll give you another message center post if we decide to bring that back. I will pull your attention to things like Copilot Actions, which vanished without a trace, right, after some period of time after its initial announcement.
Yeah, or the arrival of GPT-5 happened, that button happened pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting with those changes to changes, because sometimes they'll issue a second MC item saying, ignore the other MC item, now we're not doing it. And other times they will update the primary MC item to say, this has changed. But if you're not paying attention...
Or you may have 5 or 10 different message center post items about the same thing, because they've decided to carve off chunks of it in different ways. And then you play games of trying to reconcile, right, which one is the correct one, because they've told me many different things.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yes, it gets quite confusing at times. The next thing I want to do is I want to do a little survey here. And I'll put the answers on screen as they come in. so to keep the collected data anonymous, you can give yourself a code name in the first question. But the other questions are about your tenant and how you manage change in your tenant. And my suspicion is that company size, tenant size, really determines how much resources you have to deal with message center management. So the first couple of questions are asking about the organizational structures that you're supporting. So how many end users you have, how many IT staff overall, and how many M365 admins or service owners. And if you call them something different in your environment, please put that in chat. Like, do you call the person in charge of Exchange a service owner, an engineer, a what? And for example, at NORC, the Social Science Research Institute that I work at, we have about 2,400 staff. We have about something less than 200 IT people, and there's about 8 of us managing M365.
Yeah, and we see radical differences between customers. Some customers have very elaborate different service owners for every same thing, and some just have a team of 3, and every workload rolls up into them, and they kind of share the load. So it's quite radically different depending on the organization's approach to M365 and some of their history as well around who managed the servers, or do we outsource the core service and we just, we run the strategy. It's very interesting to see how different it is.
I worked at organizations as small as 1,000 people and as large as 60,000 people. And obviously you have a lot more people involved in managing the environment when you're a 60,000 person organization. And yeah, again, in my tenant, we do message center triage weekly. I know there are some organizations out there that do some form of that daily, others less often. Certainly I've seen if you're a smaller shop under 1,000 and don't have the resources and dedicated people to manage the environment, if you're trying to do it yourself, most of the time it seems like you're just going to fail to keep up. Planner sync, there was some discussion of this in the chat. This is something that's built into Planner. I've actually done other webinars about this. Planner sync is built into Message Center. You can set it up. It'll pump the messages to Planner where you can treat them as tasks. And that's a big step up from only dealing with them in Message Center. Message Center has no understanding that Message Center triage is a team sport. Planner is designed for task management for teams.
Yeah, and it absolutely is a team sport. Like there's no way any individual is staying on top of this. So having the ability to track who's got which item and where you are in the process is so key.
Unless you are planning on having a couple of full-time people do nothing but manage your message center, it's almost certainly a team sport.
Even full-time, even 2 full-time is still a team sport, right? One person
Yeah.
wouldn't, I don't think, could hack it. And like the decision-making process, more importantly, it's not one person's decision in the organization when it comes in things like InfoSec and compliance decisions and corporate policy. Like, are we a Viva engaged shop or are we not? Are we teams? Are we, and certainly with AI, that's fascinating as well. That really is getting a lot of business side engagement as to what we choose to use. Do we go just Copilot chat? Do we go full Copilot? How do we talk about features that are partially rolled out? So if we've only got 2,000 users with Copilot chat, Copilot full licenses, we don't want to keep pitching the experience to the whole organization when they don't have it yet.
So again, please fill out the survey. And so, okay, 75% of you don't use third-party tools. What just happened? Let's see, there we are. Yeah, it's up to 80%. Of those who do, you're using Changefile. I'm sure that makes Tom very happy here.
That's good to see.
And let's see, have you built any systems or tools to help you with Message Center? Most of you have not, but a few of you have.
Yeah, there was a good conversation in the chat about using Power Automate with Planner to
yeah.
kind of do some labeling things. That was very clever.
Yeah. Right now, Planner Sync can only sync to standard plans, and one day, if it can sync to a premium plan, you can use Copilot, or if you can somehow use the API and do machine learning. Like if you've been tagging or assigning the planner tasks that represent message center posts to people for, in our case, what, at least 3 years now, you've got this rich data set you could train an AI on, do machine learning, and it could most likely very accurately predict what task should be assigned to what person. In many environments, you can come up with just a straight set of rules to do that as well. So yeah, using a Power Automate to assign who's responsible for a particular change can save a lot of time.
I will say, even if you do your triage, some of the challenge that you're going to get is does this actually apply in my world? And that is particularly a challenge like in our world right now when we're talking about AV related changes because, well, does that currently marry up to my stack? I'm not using Teams rooms at the moment, but I am using some aspects in some of the integrations that I use for the panels, right? So trying to figure out, are these important? And even sometimes when I talk to my workload owners, they're like, I don't know. Help me figure this out. And sometimes more heads are just better than one.
Let's see. So how do people communicate changes? So Teams channel posts is very common. Email newsletter to all staff is another approach. Email to selected staff. I know in our organization we're very reticent to do an all staff email. Targeted communications, targeted emails are fine, but any of the change communications we do that go to everybody are part of a much larger newsletter. So we'll have like a tip of the week or a little notice, like 1 or 2 sentences in a broader newsletter. And then there's still concerns about readership.
Always.
And yeah, the digital signage, visual signage, no one's using bathroom signage. Meetings, interesting that people do that. Meetings are a good way to communicate with others. I see some videos and some other. If you have other channels, please put those in the chat. I'm curious what other ways you're communicating change. Bathroom signage, you could even see this at if you've ever visited a Microsoft office, or at least a Microsoft, what they used to call Technology Center, or now they call an Innovation Hub. The one in Chicago, if you go into the men's bathroom at least, over the urinals, there are sign holders, and they used to have signs there. In some cases, they were advertising for partner offerings, but any kind of change management, that can be a very effective way to get people's attention and communicate with people. So I think that's a missed opportunity in many cases.
I should also mention, Michael, I do office hours twice a week, so that no matter what is going on in M365 and you're just lost and you don't know where to get started, I always open up office hours twice a week. Anyone can come by. It's always at the same time. They're all virtual, so that, someone's just like, I just need to understand this thing, or I don't understand what you said, or, they could just come by and ask.
Yeah. So we run office hours once a month, and it's been a mixed bag in as much as some people will come by with questions, what we really love, because that'll drive the conversation. Other people will come by just to listen, and then we have to have some content prepared, which we do, and so we communicate, we show people tips and tricks, and some of the stuff isn't necessarily new stuff. Window V is the copy from the clipboard history shortcut key. That's been around for a while, but if it's anyone it's new to, it's mind-blowing for them.
And that's why office hours is so very powerful, because there are new people coming to M365 all the time. So even though you might be like, oh man, that's so old hat, I did that 10 years ago, right? And not everyone's doing that for, that type of length of time. And so they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about, right? So it's always really useful to open up some time where you can actually talk.
Definitely, especially you can get people engaged. And Michael, just quick time check. We're getting close to the top of the slot now.
Okay. Let's see. I got those. Oh, okay. So so on a scale of 1 to 5, how much in control of the change do you feel your organization is? 2.89. That's sort of squarely in the middle. That's better than I expected. So that's good to hear. Let's see. I'll look at this and I do plan to take this feedback and package it up and share it with the service change communications team at Microsoft, so that they can hopefully make our experience better.
Yeah, it's great to hear people's opinions, because we can share that back with that team, and it doesn't always create instant change, but it does get listened to.
And then let's go on past that. There we go. Another thing everyone should know about is that, speaking of change, Microsoft has a OneDrive marketing event tomorrow, and this will announce what's coming in OneDrive. Now, I went and asked the group product manager if we're also going to see Message Center posts timed to this event. He assured me that they're not, but the things that are mentioned here, you could expect to see either should already be on the roadmap, and they're announcing that they're in preview or arriving general availability, or you may see new things in roadmap and new things in Message Center show up as a result. But according to my source, we're not going to see at like 9:05 a.m. Central, poof, a whole bunch of Message Center posts because of stuff they've announced in this event. Nonetheless, I would encourage you to attend that, as Microsoft marketing events are a important way to stay on top of sort of the bigger picture of change. Likewise, we've got Ignite coming in November. If you are going to be at Ignite, please put something in the chat. I will be attending that, and I'm trying to organize a Message Center user group meetup on the Monday then, but finding a venue to be somewhat challenging. If you happen to have an office or a meeting room in San Francisco that's available at around lunchtime on 11/17, and you'd like to host a user group meeting to talk more about Message Center, please let me know. You can put that in chat. Yeah, so, here's the resources slide I promised earlier. Here's
we'll share the deck around to everybody who joined as well, so we'll ping it out as an email. But thanks so much for joining. Thanks to Arin as well for sharing so openly about her experience. Really appreciate that. If anybody else who's on the session is interested in sharing their experiences as well, we'd welcome you to this kind of session. I just threw in the chat there, as well as the resources. We have a monthly change community call. We talk about the changes. So if you're one of those people who's looking after change and wants to stay up to speed on what the conversation is, then that's another great place. But thanks so much for joining. We'll ping around an email. Michael, thanks for putting this together as well. You've done the lion's share of the lift here. Arin did all the presentation work. We were just the around the side. So thanks to everybody.